Welcome to Presently Presents.
Your dreams will constantly change. I can remember when I was like 23, 24, my dream was to present a radio show. And that was like my lifetime ambition, was to present one radio show. And don't get me wrong, it's an amazing thing to do. But when you've done that, you're then like, well, what's next? So I think the sky's the limit. I think the further into your career you get, the more selective about what jobs you can become, what jobs you can become.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to say yes to absolutely everything. Mm-hmm. And I still do say yes to most opportunities. But I think you just get to better at compartmentalizing those feelings.
Today's Presently Presents guest is a multimedia presenter who works all over the world presenting, hosting and commentating on many different sporting events. Previously working for the BBC, he worked at 11 local and national TV and radio stations across the UK. As a Midlands correspondent for the Premier League, he interviewed footballers and managers of some of the biggest clubs in the world, including the likes of Dele Alli, Wayne Rooney and Jamie Vardy, with the reports broadcast live to millions of people globally. He's worked for many brands such as ESPN, Coca-Cola, US Open, NBC Sports, and many, many, many more, which we'll come on to. So today's Presently Presents guest is Tzanoudakis.
You've read my bio on.
I've read your website.
I love it.
So, how are you? Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm very well, thank you.
Fabulous.
I'm a little bit tired. I've just come back from Turkey, covering an event in Ankara, the capital city of Turkey, which was long hours, long days, adrenaline fueled, and you always get a bit of a come down when you come back from events. I'm kind of post-event come down at the moment.
You're literally always away, which we'll come to in a bit later on. But quickly, did I get your Tzanoudakis? Is that right?
Yeah. And what about yours? Todd?
Yeah. They're both T. It's a good surname, though. Is that quite useful, having a bit of a distinctive surname for presenting?
You know what? I think it has its pros and its cons. I think it's a little bit diverse. It's a little bit interesting. And once people remember it, they don't forget it. But remembering it in the first place can be a bit of a challenge. So pros and cons.
So, I mean, I've known of you for quite a while now, right? I mean, weirdly, you're one of those people I've never met in real life, which is so bizarre. But we talk reasonably regularly, and I use you as someone who I can come to if I have a question, like, oh, what did you do about this, blah blah. But yeah, we have never met in real life. But talk us from miles back when you first started presenting, because I know you've been presenting for like over a decade, right? How did you get started in this industry?
Well, yeah, look, just touching on what you said there, isn't it bizarre in the world that we live in? We both live in the same city. We've known each other for about 5 years, and this is the first we've ever come to meeting. It's so strange.
Hiding, yeah.
So, what was the question again?
How did you start? How did you get started?
So, I went to university in Suffolk, which is where I grew up. So I went to my local university, and then during that time made links with my local BBC radio station. So shout out to BBC Local Radio, which is, as you know, a brilliant way into this industry. So I started off working initially in sport for my local BBC radio station. There were few opportunities in sport, as there often are when you're starting out. So I then sort of diversified, moved into news, and kind of started my BBC local radio journey, working in news, firstly for BBC Suffolk and then across other regions across the UK, as far as Manchester, a lot around the Midlands, lived in the Midlands for like 4 or 5 years, and then moved gradually into sport.
So does that mean that, what were you doing, a sort of broadcast degree? What was the degree in? I
did film media and journalism at University Campus Suffolk, which is endorsed by the University of East Anglia. So I'm one of those sort of rare people that studied media and then made a career out of media.
That's so true, because I feel like everyone either studies media and then goes into something completely different, or doesn't study at all and then goes into the media. It's like no one just follows the route.
Exactly. And when you're studying a media degree, people assume, they don't know what to do, so they've just gone for media because they can. And to be honest, there was an element of that. But equally, I was one of those weird kids who used to record radio shows from home when I was like 10 years old. I had a tape recorder, and I just used to sit there and film my own radio show and listen to my own voice, which is incredibly narcissistic. But I think it was.
I can imagine that.
Yeah. I don't have those recordings anymore because did you do
Oh.
that as well? Am I right in thinking that you recorded your own
No,
videos?
I actually never did that sort of thing. I was quite I wasn't that so it seems weird now doing presenting now, but I wasn't that confident in that way when I was younger, which is so strange. I've kind of grown into that in my sort of 20s. But yeah, I never would have done that sort of thing.
Because what's impressed me about your career is you're very young. You're 24?
25 now. 26 soon, actually,
Oh,
James.
goodness
I'm
me.
aging.
Yeah, it's weird because I've known you for so long. I just assumed you were forever young 20s.
Forever young.
But you had obviously big opportunities early on in your 20s.
Yeah.
And you continue to get those good opportunities now. But I think that was always what impressed me about you was you had those
thank you.
early on in your 20s, which not a lot of people have. So
aren't you kind?
Yeah.
Oh, very sweet.
Always good to see you doing so well.
Thank you very much. That's very kind. Well, that's thrown me off. I'm like, what do I say now? Thank you. So you did your degree and you started doing BBC stuff. What do you think it is about being on camera or working in the media? Because I mean, you mainly, I don't know if you do some producey type stuff, but you're mainly on camera, right? That's your main thing, right?
Yeah.
So what made you? What do you think it is about it that you enjoy so much?
So I think as a result of my career, I've become a bit of an adrenaline junkie. As you'll know, like being in front of camera, working on events, traveling for work is just a pure adrenaline rush. So I think a lot of it comes from just that want for that feeling you get, entertaining. And it's just such a good fun thing to do. You meet so many people, you meet so many interesting people, and especially in the world of sports. So yeah, a lot of, just going back to what you were saying, a lot of what I'm doing is in front of camera or in front of microphone, and a lot of it is in sports events where you have athletes from all over the world. Some of them are huge famous stars, some of them are up and coming Olympians, and they all just have the best stories and they all just have the most interesting lives. And I guess it's that thirst for wanting to, being a presenter or a commentator or whatever you want to describe us as, is very much about being interested in people, I think, isn't it? And being a people person. So, that addiction to adrenaline, the want to get to know people and to build relationships with people around the world is really what sort of drives me forward, I think.
Yeah, that's a really nice answer. I think as well with the buzz, I think you're right, because I've definitely had jobs where I've come back and if your mood can really fluctuate depending on it. Like I found that if I do a job and I think, right, if it's gone well, I've enjoyed it, the sort of high I feel for the rest of the day is really big. If it's a job where maybe I didn't feel like I did how I wanted to, or if the people maybe weren't nice to work with or something like that, I'm like on such the opposite. I'm so low. It's bad actually to be that. Because most people can kind of come home from work from a normal job and then forget about it. But it is weird, isn't it, how much it can affect your mood? I think that can be a pro and a con at the same time. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I think the further into your career you get, the more selective about what jobs you can become, what jobs you take you can become. Because I used to say yes to absolutely everything. And I still do say yes to most opportunities, but I think you just get to better at compartmentalizing those feelings. So if you do have a bad day, you think, well, at least I've got this to look forward to, and I can. You kind of. But I know what you mean about bringing it home. It's an emotional thing, isn't it? Because you put so much. And I remember, like in the early days of my presenting career, I had some training, and it was something along the lines of, no matter how you're feeling, no matter what mood you're in, no matter what's happened before, or however stressed or whatever feeling you have, that all has to be put to one side. When you're in front of that camera, you have to be 100% performing on your A game. And that's quite draining. It's quite stressful, and it's, you can do it and you can get yourself in a mind frame, but then when you take a step back from it, especially if it's been like a long stint where you've done 2 or 3 weeks, like you did with that travel show you did, for example, you come back and you're just exhausted.
Yeah, that is so true. And that travel show was horrendous because off the back of it, I went straight to Glastonbury, which was the worst thing I could have done. Literally flew in to the airport, had like an hour to pack, went straight to Glastonbury, and I got COVID. And I'm not surprised because I was so run down, I think.
So did you get COVID at Glastonbury? Or?
Yeah, I got COVID at Glastonbury. And I think, because I remember thinking I felt so unwell, and I was like, why did I feel so run down? But I put it all on the travel show. And I got home and I was like, I'm going to do a COVID test just to see. COVID. And I was like, well, no one, I mean, I was so susceptible to it at the time because I was so run down. It's really tiring. It's like being on your, and what you say about you can't let it show in your work. I remember doing a job once where it was a really lovely job and I was really enjoying it. I was having a really good day. And then an email came through. I was learning a couple of lines sort of in between takes. And an email came through for a job I really wanted. And they were like, you haven't got it. And I was like, and I remember like my eyes immediately teared up, which is so childish, but I was just like, it was just something I really wanted. And it was just like such a blow and it was just not what I expected. And I thought I'd gone really well and blah, blah, blah. And I planned it in my mind. And then I had to then go on to the next bit. And I just told the crew, I was like, look, guys, I've just had a really sad email that I didn't get a job I really wanted, but they were like really nice about it. And I was like, but if I do something quiet in between takes, that's why.
Yeah.
How did that
film go though? Did you manage to put that?
Well, I guess you have to, don't you? You put a little face on and you pretend. It's almost like acting in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, actors would be like, no, it's not. It's completely different. But I know, I totally agree with you on that. It's performing, isn't it? It is
100%.
And that's an important point you touch upon. I think is the disappointment factor. And, I think this industry very much is a case of. I've said this so many times before, but like it's like you pick up a handful of stones and you're throwing them at a signpost and hoping that one or two hit. You've got to put yourself forward for so many different things, and ultimately you will get good news. It will, you will get the jobs. Not to say that you like desperately want, but you will get good jobs. It can sometimes take time, and I think that's another thing you have to really prepare yourself for in this industry is disappointment because it regularly happens. There's highs and lows, and it's a normal part of it.
Yeah, and I think also people, and I think I've talked about this in this podcast before, but people always think what they see on social. Because I'll take up with you, for example. I mean, I message you sometimes, but you are always away, and you actually are often away. To be fair, it's not like it's fake, but you are often away. But it's like you look like you're constant. I always think like you must not have a day off. You must always be working. But I'm sure you do have days where you're not working, or times when you're not necessarily working as much. And it's the same with everyone. Like people always kind of see how other people, it looks like everyone's doing. Yeah, I guess you only see the good things, right? On socials, you only see everyone's highs.
It's a highlight reel, isn't it? And so I think it's important not to compare yourself to other people. Like, I'm learning that as well. Like you'll see other people doing amazing things. You're like, I want to do that, but then you mustn't compare yourself to other people because Instagram is just a highlight reel. I mean, I use my Instagram solely for work. I say like 95% of what I'm putting on my Instagram is work. I don't put any friends or family unless it's tied in with work. Like if we go out on a work event, then I might a couple of stories. But yeah, I mean, I do travel a lot. Last year, I was away for 5 months of the year. So, close to 6 months of the year, I was abroad in hotels, overseas, traveling. And yeah, I mean, this year I've learned to enjoy it more. But last year, I was getting to the point where I was like, this is almost getting too much,
Yeah, because that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. How do you find it being someone who presents abroad so often? Because obviously you live in London. You're married, she lives in London. Like, how does it work with being away all the time?
Yeah,
Is it tough?
It is and it isn't. I think physically it's quite exhausting because traveling is tiring. I know that sounds silly, doesn't it? Because like people who don't travel for work will love going to the airport, but airports are not built for comfort. I'm sitting on airplanes. Well, I'm tall. I'm 6'2", and so I'm rarely traveling business class. I'm mostly traveling economy class. Sometimes long haul flights, sometimes not. But so the physical side of things is tiring. You do start to get used to that though, and you do start to adapt your life so that when you're traveling, you can make it a little bit more to how your life at home is. So I continue. I go to the gym a lot, and I've started to do that like regularly whilst traveling. You start to take food and drink with you that you would normally consume at home, and then I swear to God, my suitcase is 30 kilograms every time I travel. Even if I'm traveling for like 3 or 4 days, it's still like 25, 26 kilograms.
That's insane. So do you bring food on your snacks you like?
I usually take about 5 or 6 pairs of trainers with me. I know, I have a bit of a problem. 4 or 5 suit jackets, then like protein shakes and stuff like that. So
all the essentials.
Life on the road.
So you do a lot of sports presenting, and that's again all over the world. Talk us through some of your favourite credits you've done, if you can pick some.
Yeah, absolutely. So the job I get most excited about is my next big job, which is US Open. So US Open is one of the biggest sports events in the world. My job there is as a presenter for a show, and as an on-court tennis host. So I'm like hosting the tennis court for the day. For example, they have like one of the courses is Arthur Ashe Stadium, biggest tennis court in the world, 25,000 seater tennis court. And you think, okay, a football stadium, 25,000 is normal. But for a tennis court, it's a small court and it's like a bowl. It's incredibly, it's intense. That's in New York as well. So that's my favorite job. That is, I'm so hyped and so excited. That is from, that poster is from the US Open 2021 when Emma Raducanu won the US Open.
There she is.
And there she is. And
it's a cool print.
Whether you're a fan of sports or not, everyone will remember that moment.
Yeah.
Sporting moment. So being there for big sporting moments is one of the best feelings in the world.
So that's your favourite. Have you got any other highlights you've had?
Yeah, so I've done a couple of Olympics. So I did Rio 2016 Olympics, which was the best time of my life. I did Tokyo Olympics, which was was 2021 as well. I do pentathlon as well. I do sort of 5 or 6 pentathlon events a year, which I absolutely love. I do some work in football as well. So, but yeah, I think US Open, Olympics, pentathlon, and just any tennis event I ever do. Tennis events are they're hard work, but they are the absolute best. I live and breathe tennis events.
So what got you into doing sports? Because obviously you started off in BBC local radio, which isn't, you might be doing sports coverage, but it's not particularly sporty. How did you make such a big leap from doing BBC local radio to like massive worldwide sporting events?
Well, do you know what? There is literally like, I can go step by step with how that sort of went.
Do it.
So I did BBC local radio. I was doing sports in BBC local radio. Then I went and did news, started working in TV. So it was East Midlands Today. Which is equivalent to like Look East, BBC London, the regional TV.
Yeah, your local BBC News,
Yeah, and I had some reasonably good opportunities in that, but then I was like...
How old are you at this point, sorry?
So that would have been 25, I think, 26.
About my age then?
About your age.
Okay, cool. It's quite young to be doing that sort of thing as well.
Was quite young, and I'll be honest, I was probably a little bit out of my depth at that point, working for BBC Regional TV. I was not particularly confident in front of camera. Wasn't a hugely experienced journalist, but it was still a good opportunity. And you obviously say yes to everything, don't you? You're never going to go, no, I'm not ready for this. You do it.
Yeah, you do it.
And then I went back to BBC Radio to really focus on sport while I was working at BBC Radio Leicester. Then I went back to BBC East Midlands Today, where I got opportunity to do TV sport. And then I got headhunted by the Premier League to cover. So basically, the Premier League have their own TV channel. It's not broadcast in the UK. It's broadcast all around the world. And it has millions and millions of people that watch all around the world.
Amazing.
And I was living in the Midlands at the time. And so I was their Midlands correspondent.
How did they find you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so they called up BBC's Midlands Today and they said, we're looking for a reporter. And everybody else was on staff contracts and I was freelance. So the Mark Shardlow, the sports editor at the time, he didn't want to give up any of his stuff, so he gave up my name because obviously I wasn't tied into a contract with him. So that was my first big opportunity, really, was Premier League, Premier League productions.
Okay, and then you did that, and then is that kind of how did it all just kind of snowball after that? Or
well, so I did 2 seasons with the Premier League, and I was covering somebody who was on long-term sick leave, and thankfully she came back. Which then obviously meant my contract wasn't renewed. But obviously you can see how I worded that. Thankfully, she came back because she came back from long-term sick leave.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I then was sort of left without a job. So, we talk about these highs and lows. But then that kind of molded how my career's gone since then. And, looking back on it, I'm so grateful that opportunity did happen. At the time, I was devastated because I was loving that job. But it was just before the summer of 2016. And I'd been networking the whole way through that time. I'd been working at the Premier League, always looking for the next opportunity because you'll know when you're on a big job, the last thing you can do is sit back and, think, okay, that's it, I'm set now. You've got to be looking forward and got to be networking, reaching out to people. And I got taken to the Olympic Games in 2016 by a guy called Alan March, who runs Alan March Sport, and he needed a commentator to commentate on the tennis. And so that's how I then started getting into events. And from then it's been pretty much events. And the way things work now is I have probably 10, maybe 12 events I have throughout the year. So that's usually works out around one event a month. So that's one event a month that I'm doing. And then that's 1 to 2 weeks. So then I'm either just relaxing because it's hard being away for 2 weeks every month, or just picking up little odd jobs in between then. So
Yeah.
I am busy. I'm not going to try and play it down. I'm at the
No,
moment.
you are because I see you on sort of socials all the time, and you're all like literally every time I open Instagram, you're somewhere abroad. It's constant, isn't it? So it must be quite draining, but really fun. And what a thing to be able to do in your young life is just to go see the world and do all these cool things. With sports, do you think? Like, for example, would you like to only do sports now and that kind of be it? I know you do a bit of corporate and stuff like that, don't you? Do the random odd jobs, and you've done some BBC Bite Size and stuff like that, because you do other stuff as well. I'm not saying you only do sports, but
Sure.
That's your main thing. Is that something that you kind of want to just focus on now forever, or would you ever like to see yourself kind of broaden out into sort of more entertainment type stuff?
It's a really good question, and I'm very much one of those people that's like always never say never, always be open to every opportunity. The show I'm presenting at the US Open, the Changeover show, which actually they're not going to do this year. They've taken a different angle and they're going to do something slightly different. We haven't found out what it is yet. I don't know if I should say that actually. I don't know if it's been publicly announced. Anyway, whatever. The Changeover show was kind of going in the direction of entertainment because it was a tennis-based show at a tennis competition, but they had a lot of Hollywood actors on the show and a lot of sort of more. I mean, I'm not very clued up when it comes to entertainment. I'm obviously clued up when it comes to sport. So I was like rushing from the court to go and do this show, like Googling people's names and be like, oh, actually, they're pretty famous, and like not knowing who they are until I got to the studio. And then, the one person we had who I absolutely did know who he was Harry Jowsey from Too Hot to Handle.
Okay.
No one really knows who he is. And he was like not the least famous person, but he wasn't one of the stars they had. But
he's one you knew.
I knew who he was, so I was super excited by that. Harry Jowsey from Too Hot to Handle, and he was brilliant. He was so much fun.
Oh, is he the one? Was he going out with that on Too Hot to Handle? Was he the one who was with what's her name, Francesca or something? Or was it?
I think so.
Was he English?
He was Australian.
No, Australian. Oh, I do know. I do know who you mean. Yeah, he's a good-looking bloke. He was on the first season, wasn't he?
Yeah, and that's the only series I watched, and I just watched it before going out there. It was so
what a random celebrity.
It was so random, and like they put forward for example, the girl who played Serena Williams' daughter in the Serena Williams film, and I probably should have known who that was, but I didn't. Plus, there was like a load of comedians that were like a lot of them were American comedians, and
so it's like our British comedians wouldn't be necessarily known.
Exactly, yeah. So, but yeah, that was kind of going back to the original question.
Yeah,
I mean, I would like you want to put yourself forward for as many different things as you possibly can. You want to chase as many opportunities as you can. But equally, when you have a niche, it's good to explore that niche. And then you just don't know what opportunities can come out of having a niche. Then you just, you can, as a presenter, you pretty much can squeeze into any role. Like it's, if someone was saying, oh, we need someone to talk about tennis, then they might come to me to talk about tennis. But equally, you could do that. You could read up a bit of information. I know you've been working in sport a bit as well, haven't you? So
I do, running stuff, but I feel like running's a bit easier because everyone it's kind of not as specialised because I think everyone can run, but I only do a little bit of that, like running events.
Well, I don't know. The first time I did pentathlon, so pentathlon's 5 different sports. It's swimming, running, shooting, riding, and fencing. And I had never covered any of those sports.
No.
And then suddenly had to do all 5 of them in one event, and you just do it. You know what it's like.
You just say yes and work it out later.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, now I'm probably I'm an expert on pentathlon, but it's only because I've done it for 5 years. Initially, I had no clue.
But yeah, but for now, you're quite content within the sporting kind of side, I guess.
The thing is, I'm lucky because I've got continuity in my career. So I'm self-employed, I'm freelance, but I'm kind of not because I know where I'm going to be for most of the year. Clients come and go. So I lost one of my biggest clients this year, which was a tennis event, which had 4 events over the year. It was the Qatar Tennis Federation. And I lost that client this year. So, you could just like that, you can lose a ton of money and a ton of events. But again, I got lucky and I replaced that pretty quickly with other events. So
how do you feel when things like that go wrong? Like what's your good tips for handling, I guess, like a rejection or bad news or things like that? What's your tips for that?
I mean, without trying to sound cliched, I'm very much a positive thinker, and I often find when one door closes, another one opens. When I lost the Qatar Tennis Federation job, on the same day, I got offered the Abu Dhabi Mubadala Abu Dhabi Open, which is like another massive tennis event. On the same day. It was so
That's so
strange.
weird, isn't it?
At the beginning of the year, if you said to me you're going to lose Qatar Tennis Federation, I would have probably despaired, because I was like working towards that being like a really big part of my calendar. So I think when stuff happens, it is a bit of a kick in the stomach, and you are going to feel miserable. Like if I got a call today saying we don't need you at the US Open, I would be devastated, absolutely devastated. But it happens. And it could happen. I mean, so for example, I'm chasing Wimbledon at the moment. Wimbledon's probably like the tennis event I'm desperate to do. Mostly because I'm like, it's only like 7
like
miles
so close
that way, and I'm traveling to New York to do the biggest tennis event in the world, arguably. Like, why don't Wimbledon want me? But I'm making progress, and sometimes it takes time. You know, it can take 3-4 years to get the job you want sometimes.
Have you got any networking tips? Like, how do you kind of go about networking? Are you kind of like a LinkedIn? Are you word of mouth? Do you go to events? What do you do?
Honestly, a bit of everything. I think you've just listed like the best ways to network there. LinkedIn,
all of the above,
is a good one, but I think the response, you'll probably find is the response rate on LinkedIn's not that good. It's
pretty bad. I find that for every sort of 10 messages I send, I might get like one reply.
But you know what? That in itself is a really good point. Like if you get that one reply from 10 messages you send, it's about ignoring those 9 replies. Well, not ignoring them, but like putting them to the side. Focusing on. So the Abu Dhabi event that I told you I got at the beginning of this year, that came from LinkedIn. So the producer of that event, I followed on LinkedIn, had messaged her a few years ago. She didn't need me, and then I messaged her again this year, and she's like, "Well, actually, send me over some details. I'm just going to introduce you to my dog, by the way, because he's just
oh, I didn't even know you had a dog.
This is Frank.
How long have you had a dog for?
Got him last March, I think it was.
Oh, hello, Frank. So he's cute.
Always, every podcast should have a dog in it.
Yeah, little lick as well.
Good one.
If anyone's just listening to this on sort of a podcast platform and not watching the YouTube version, they're going to be like, what's going on?
Yeah, this is where you have to use your wonderful descriptive painting a picture to those who aren't watching skills.
Yeah, so there's a man here called James and a black lab. Was it a lab?
He's a cockador, so he's half Labrador, half...
Oh, okay. I did think he looked a bit slim for a Labrador. He's not that kind
Sometimes
of
people are like, oh, he looks a bit skinny. I'm like...
yeah, just accusing your parenting.
Yeah.
Are you feeding him?
Yeah. No, he gets enough food.
Hiya, it's Sophie from Made in Kent Radio. I know firsthand how hard it is to get into radio. You can't get experience without a radio reel. And you can't make a radio reel without having radio experience. Well, here at Made in Kent Radio, we're going to change that by offering you a professional radio demo pack. We'll help you produce a professional industry standard radio reel in our studios. And not only that, you'll get a 1-hour slot on a Sunday evening to test your skills. And we'll even put you on the roster to cover shows here at Made in Kent Radio. What's not to love? We have an exclusive discount code for Presently users too. That's PRES10. Head to madeinkent.co.uk to find out more, and we'll see you at the studios.
What were we talking about? We were saying about networking, and you were saying about messaging, and then they came back to you, and then
Yeah. So So I think the question you asked was, what's your sort of technique for networking?
Yeah.
I think LinkedIn is a good one, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
It's and I don't know if you've ever experimented with LinkedIn Premium.
I haven't actually, just because it is quite expensive, isn't it?
Really expensive. You can do a free trial. I just did the free trial because it's like £60 a month. I mean,
it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, isn't it? But I just did the free trial, and then if you cancel the free trial, they offer you the free trial again. So I just use that sort of month as like a bit of. Actually, I didn't use it nearly as much as I should have done, but yeah. So LinkedIn's a good one, So I think just through speaking to people, say for example, you were like, oh, I need to speak to someone about a running event. Do you know anyone? You spread word around, and quickly you'll find contacts. And it's very much a case of who you know, not what you know. This industry, isn't it? Do you find that as well? Like,
Yeah. Oh my god, so much. Even the other day I was talking to someone. We were even talking about work. It was like he's a producer type person. And we were just going to catch up about something completely different. And then I said, I think he was saying about how he's doing I was asking what he's up to at the moment. And I said, oh, and I think, I can't remember how it came in, but I mentioned a job I'd done, which was about history. And he was like, oh no, that's so interesting. I'm working with someone who we might be doing something like a history show soon, blah, blah, blah. That's good to know. Not that it didn't develop into anything, it's only the other day, but it's just those sorts of comments. People go, okay, I didn't know that you liked that or whatever. And so many times where people have put you forward because, or like the jobs you've done and you've worked with the same production company over and over again, and then they kind of get you back in for something else, and you think you've got a quiet month, and then suddenly they come up and say, oh, do you want to do this? And it is a bit who you know, isn't it?
And yeah, and I don't think there's such thing as a quiet month. I think there's such thing as an unpaid month, but like, in this industry, we don't stop. Like I'm not doing any presenting today, of the podcast, obviously.
Yeah,
and here we are, and in front of
you're involved in this.
And suddenly it just like stuff can happen. But in terms of, you know, going out and being on set, but that doesn't mean I haven't been up since 9 this morning, emailing, editing clips, putting stuff on social media, chatting to people, taking phone calls, doing podcasts. There is no such thing as a quiet day in this industry.
Do you do a lot of emailing, would you say?
When I get back from events, then I often ignore my emails when I'm away, so I have to catch up on things. And in terms of networking, if I do have so for example, July is quiet for me because I kept it open for Wimbledon. So I've got.
It's quite a brave move, actually, isn't it? Like you have to think like that.
It can be. I did have work I turned down as well because I was convinced I was going to be at Wimbledon this year, but you know, I'm not despairing because I do have potentially an opportunity for next year, and that is, you know, that's something that I would say to people is a really important thing. Like the disappointment doesn't have to be the end of the story, you know.
No.
If someone says, well, we've not got anything for you at the minute, but try again in 6 months or whatever, try again in 6 months, add them on social media and make sure they follow you back as well, because ultimately we follow people on social media, because we're interested in them. We want them to be interested in us as well. And as soon as someone's following you, they start seeing your stuff. And it's I think that's important. And you know, Instagram is our form of advertisement.
I've
just got.
I was saying this.
1 second, sorry. Instagram is our form of advertisement because we, you know, that it is so important for that. I think, don't you?
Yeah, I was talking about because all my friends like aren't in this kind of, as in like sort of non-work friends aren't in this sort of industry, and I was talking to one of them about this the other day, and I was saying, you know, let's say I have a LinkedIn. I'm not very good at these things like LinkedIn and stuff like that. When I remember putting something out, it was a little bit more, it was like COVID time, and I posted a thing on LinkedIn, and it's not like one of those ones that goes viral and has thousands of likes, which some people do, but it had like, let's say 100 and something, which was like quite a lot for me on LinkedIn. So for LinkedIn, that was right. And because I think I put quite an honest caption about how I'd been quite struggling with COVID, with having no work and blah, blah, blah. And it did quite well. But off the back of it, I remember getting quite a few ads and quite a few people messaging me saying, oh, we might have some stuff coming up, we'll keep you in mind. And it actually transpired. And one of them, I'm pretty sure, ended up being, I think he came off of this. He's someone who gives me quite regular different jobs. You know, I've worked with him quite a few times. I was approached. And it's the same with Instagram. Like if I do an Instagram post, which does quite well, again, you know, people kind of follow you from the explore kind of pages or hashtags or whatever that may be. And you do, I do think, even though I hate it, because I don't want to be the sort of person who like worries too much about like Instagram likes or engagement or anything like that. I don't to an extent, but when I have noticed an actual benefit from when things do well. So I even say to my friends, I'm like, if you ever see my post on your feed, just react to it, because it does actually genuinely help me out. It's so weird, isn't it?
Every little helps. And I've started to move away from the obsession of likes and shares and all that kind of thing, and I just put content out there, and if it gets seen by 3 people that I want it to be seen by, that's enough.
I agree.
I'm not like an influencer. I'm not hired because I have massive numbers on social media, although I did get lucky on TikTok, and I've got quite a big following on TikTok, but I don't use it. But if you're putting something on LinkedIn and it gets 5 or 6 likes, still 5 or 6 people that have seen something that you're doing, and often people will see stuff and not engage with it. And I can track, like, so the US Open, I'm pretty sure I got that job not solely but in part because of one post I put on Instagram like 3 months earlier, and the person who then got in touch with me saw that Instagram post and was like, oh, actually he could be good for this. So you just don't know. It's that analogy, you take a handful of stones, you throw them at a signpost and you hope a couple hit. And
I like that.
I honestly think that is like the best thing you can do, is just keep pushing opportunities, and stuff comes. It might not be the obvious thing that you wanted, but stuff does happen. It does. You do get opportunities if you keep pushing. It can just be slow and frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if you agree with this, but I always think with jobs, sometimes when I first started presenting, I was quite, like you say, I was quite young, and when I went freelance, I was only about 20, I don't know, 20 or something, I don't know. I think I was about 20 when I went freelance. And I used to think like, well, I you know, if I'm any good, that anything worthwhile will want me immediately. And I was just so naive about how it worked. I thought you just sent your show reel to someone and they'd say yes or no, and that was it. I just genuinely seemed to think that's how it worked. Yeah. And then it's only now, and I see people who are quite new to presenting on social media who kind of post quite a lot about not getting their dream job yet, and I look at their page and I'm like, you've been presenting for like a year, just give it time, let it breathe, because and I don't mean that in any rudeness to them, I just mean like they need to give themselves a bit more credit for where they are at. Like I see, sometimes girls I follow who might be doing really cool things, but they're not getting the TV stuff, and I've seen them post like, oh, I'm not getting these TV jobs. I'm like, it doesn't matter, it's not all about television. It's like you're working with massive brands, doing really cool things. That's enough for now, and let the TV stuff come if it comes down the line. You don't have to worry about it. And that's where I'm at now, where like I don't necessarily, I mean, maybe I should do a bit more. I don't really chase TV stuff as much as I probably used to, because I'm like, it kind of doesn't, from my experience, it doesn't really work. Like you just message them and they go, great, here's a job. It kind of, when they're looking, they'll look for people, and you need to be out there and looking busy and stuff for when they search. Because a lot of stuff I've been put forward for is just because they've come to me and found me on social media or through agencies or through show reels or whatever it might be. So you just have to be posting consistently and doing all the different jobs that give you experience. And then you speak to someone who says, oh, I know about this. And I mean, I met a guy at a job recently who's he does sound stuff, and we might be doing some work together, which is actually not just voice over stuff, but actually a bit more businessy type thing, which is just coming from, I just happened to meet this guy at an event and we got on really well. And he was like, I feel like I can see a role for you in this company I'm developing, that kind of thing. But you never know where it's going to, do you know what I mean?
That's the best feeling as well, when someone's like, we spend a lot of time chasing. When someone approaches you and is like, actually, I want you, I see, it's the best feeling, and it does happen. It's a very addictive feeling as well. I think I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not, but I get a real buzz, a real rush when I get a new client, and I'm like, oh, maybe you should just be satisfied with what you've got. I think that drives us to go forward. So I think ultimately it is a good feeling. But yeah, I get your point. And also, like, just reflecting on what you're saying about people chasing TV work. I mean, the industry's changed quite a lot. When our parents were growing up, there was 4 TV channels, and TV was everything. And people, if you were on TV, you were doing well. I think TV is kind of losing its draw a little bit. I mean, you can present for a brand and 1 million people can watch it, whereas you can present on one of the sports channels on TV and maybe only a few thousand people see it. Again, it's what's important to you. Is it how many people are watching you? Is it, I think ultimately, if you're satisfied with what you're doing, if you're enjoying what you're doing and you're getting well paid for it, then you've got nothing to complain about. Because
I think people do get very set on TV, don't they? They think that's the that's like the benchmark, that's the standard. But again, it depends, and I used to be that way. What's
meant by TV? Because a lot of what we will do will feature on TV in some shape or form. And again, it's like, what are you, like? Are you looking to be presenting as like a primetime presenter on BBC One? Because when those opportunities come around, great, but they're few and far between, and they don't last forever. If you're flicking through the TV channels, it's rare you'll see the same host presenting everything. They might get the odd opportunity, but I'm trying to think of a popular TV presenter at the moment, like Anton Deck, for example.
I
Yeah,
was going to say, there's another ITV
yeah,
presenter who I was like, don't say it,
But you
don't
know,
say
that
it.
was the first one that came to my mind because they're so in the news at the moment. We won't mention them.
Anton Deck is a good shout.
Anton Deck. So, like, in your head, you probably think, oh, Anton Deck, very successful, always busy, always on TV. When in the reality is, they do, is it Britain's Got Talent?
Yeah, that's kind of Easter time.
Yeah, and then Celebrity, what is it? I'm a Celebrity,
I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. That's
those
November to
two
December.
shows. So what are they doing for the rest of the year? They're probably
they have their, what's it called, Saturday Night Takeaway, which runs for quite a few months over the sort of summer period.
I've literally picked the busiest 2 TV presenters in the world, haven't I? And gone, but what?
Oh no, but I know what you mean. They have their set shows, and I think it is those 3 are their main shows.
Yeah.
But they've announced that they're, because it's all the stuff you do off camera, like all the prep they have to do, all the segments they film around the UK that add to that thing. But they've said they're not doing Saturday Night Takeaway next year because they just need time off because they're feeling just the effects of being. But I know what you mean. They're not on your TV every single night of the week.
No, and it's like we can go from a really busy few months where we've been filming like non-stop, and then suddenly you've got a quiet month, and you'll be like, that quiet month, you're like, oh, I'm not earning money like I was in the last month. I'm not as busy. I'm not putting stuff on the socials as much as I was. That's normal. It's part of the industry. It's what you do during that month, I think, is important, and it can be quite difficult because you're sat probably at home a lot of the time, and in the winter, especially if you get a quiet month in November, for example, it can be quite miserable.
Yeah, it really can.
Yeah, so it's tough. It's a tough industry, but you know what? We didn't get in this industry to have an easy ride, and everyone warns you it's going to be tough, and it's true. It is tough,
and it is true.
It's brilliant, and it is well paid because you do get jobs that, I'm talking a lot about the money side of things here, but the reason that you work is to earn a living, and if you get the right jobs, you do. And I think that's one thing I would really push, a real point that I'd push to all upcoming presenters, established presenters: know your worth. Never undervalue yourself, because production companies are big. There's like a big team of people working behind them, and they might say to you, what's your rate? And they'll push you down and down and down, and that actually brings the whole rate of the industry down. We're worth a lot more than I think we give ourselves credit for, and I think never undervalue yourself, and it doesn't ever hurt to reach out to someone else and say, what do you think I should get paid for this?
Yeah.
They might then turn around and say, well, look, you should get £2,000 a day for that, and you'll be thinking, oh, actually, I was only going to ask for 300 quid. It's an honor to be doing that. It's like, yeah, but you're skilled. Like, you've done a lot. You've presented some big stuff, and it takes a lot of skill to do what we do. So never undervalue yourself.
That's interesting because I actually did a shoot once, kind of recently, and on the production, it was a lot of freelancers filling out all the different like sort of production type roles. Someone we were talking about rates, and I think everyone was just being quite honest about how much they're being paid, and someone told me a rate, and I thought, and I was getting the same day rate as them to be the presenter, and they were doing, like, I won't say what that role they were doing, but they were doing a production role which is vital, but it wasn't like they weren't like directing or like it wasn't produced or anything like that. It was a smaller role, and I was thinking, I wonder if I've undershot. And they were actually getting more because they had kit with them. They were charging for the kit and all this sort of stuff. So actually, I was probably I think my boss could have been one of the worst paid on the shoot. It wasn't like bad money, but I just mean, and it's a lovely shoot, but I'm just saying, it then makes you think like, oh, should I have said more? Should I have said, how should I have thought a bit more? It's hard, isn't it? But it is really tough, because if you say a price and then they go, well, sorry, we can't afford that, we're going to use someone else, then you feel like you've lost the job. It's tough.
I don't want to give away too many of the negotiation secrets in case there are producers watching this that are like, oh, we'll hire James and we now know how to get him cheaper. But I do think you've got to be quite savvy, and I think you've got to know your worth. And listen, at the end of the day, they will have a budget, and you can't charge more than what their budget is worth. But I often, it's an important part of the business. It's something I think that should be spoken about more, and something that we should, as presenters, should talk to each other about, because, we've been through a cost of living crisis. We've been through COVID. Everybody's tight on money these days, and the cost of everything has gone up. So the cost of us should be going up in comparison with that, I think, as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I think it's a conversation worth having.
No, I completely agree. I think money is something that's really important. we'll come towards the end, but I've got a couple more questions I wanted to cover with you.
Sure.
With being, you know, you do a lot of live work. How do you handle things that go wrong live? Do you ever have things go wrong live?
Yeah, all the time.
And what do you do? What's your tips?
I generally find when stuff goes wrong, it's quite funny. So I will try to make a bit of a joke of it. And that doesn't happen straight away. Like, nerves are so normal with live content, live TV. And I've had some clangers in the past. I don't even want to point them out because, like, I've had mistakes before, and I'm like looking back on them, and I'm like, oh wow, that was
cringe.
bad.
Yeah,
and you just get through it, don't you? And you learn to react better. And when mistakes happen, you just laugh it off because it is live TV, and it's almost expected that stuff can go wrong. So I actually quite like it when stuff goes wrong, as long as it's nothing like too drastic.
Nothing awful, yeah. Something a bit fun.
I've said someone's name wrong. I'll give you an example. I've said someone's name wrong at a time when I really shouldn't have given a wrong name, and that was that was bad.
Get any booze from the person?
I had an article written about me, and it was it was like this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and it cut pretty deep, that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's tough.
But it's all part of the experience, you know. You make mistakes.
Accidents happen, mistakes
exactly
get made, right?
Accidents happen, and you know, nobody died. It's an easy thing to do. And when I got the name wrong, I corrected myself in the next sentence. So actually, looking back on it, it really wasn't a big deal. So
you weren't like, you didn't just keep calling them that wrong name.
No, that would have been wrong, and literally in the same sentence corrected it. So I think people that were there probably didn't notice, but there was one keyboard warrior who was like,
who thought article needs to be written.
Yeah.
And also in terms of, because you touched on it a little bit, obviously, with quieter months or less paid months, as we say, with sport, obviously some sport, I mean, there's always some form of sport at every point of the year, but a lot of sports kind of happen in sort of, I would say, spring, summer and autumny type thing, maybe? Or would you say that it's actually all year round equal?
It depends. It depends on the sport. There's sport all the time. What I do in terms of money is I don't think about what I make over the year. I just pay myself a set amount each month. So I have.
Okay, so you have a business account, and then are you kind of registered as a business rather than? Okay.
I'm self-employed, and I'm looking into maybe changing that. I need to have a discussion with my accountant, but I never look at what I'm making over the year. I have, I built up a little pot over time, and I pay myself a certain amount each month. So
that's interesting. So do you have it all come into an account over the year, and then you've decided how much you reckon that could be in a month, and then you've got like a direct debit almost going into your main account?
Exactly. I've worked out what I need per month, and I pay myself that. And if I spend too much, then like the rest of the world, I'm skint for the rest of that month. So I don't dig into my overall pot if I overspend. So that makes life feel a bit more normal, because then it does feel like, okay, life is 9 to 5. What I'm earning is irrelevant. It's, you pay yourself effectively what you need, and I think that's helped a lot doing that.
Yeah, because I just get paid throughout the month, random bits, and it all goes into my main account. I put it all into a savings, and I'm very good at like putting 20% away for like tax at the end of the year and all that sort of stuff. But I do just. Someone was telling me actually recently that their little tip is they don't do all their invoices till the end of the month, because normally invoices take about 30 days. So then they all get paid at the end of the following month. So it kind of comes through like a salary in that respect, which is also a good way to do it. But I don't know, the thought of just, for me, I'm always like, I'm so used to having money coming in constantly that the thought of having to then wait, I don't know, feels a bit stressful.
I've had an invoice that's taken 3-4 months to come through. So, but then when you are paying yourself that monthly salary, it takes the pressure off, and then your invoices can come whenever. When they drop in your account, you stick them in your tax account, stick them in your savings account. So if you get a job that's paid you well, and you can afford to put a little bit aside for that particular, that is honestly, was a game changer for me.
That's a good idea.
Yeah,
might look into that. It's a good tip.
Yeah, you should do.
And my last question for you is, I'd like you to sort of tell me your dream. So if you could do any job in the world that, kind of exists or doesn't have to exist, like where would you love to see your career go? And you can be as ambitious as you want. You can say, I will be the next Ant and Dec combined. I don't know.
You know what? This is like when you have a job interview and they're like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
You know, my answer to this is I need to work better on this, but my answer to this is I have already I've already achieved way more than I ever thought. And I guess that's because at the start of this journey, my expectations were quite low in how far I'd go in this industry. So for me, honestly, the dream for me is just to keep what I've got and just to gradually keep building on it. If I could, for example, cover all 4 tennis Grand Slams, that would be a dream. But equally,
and that's quite achievable for you, I would say.
I think so, and I think your dreams will constantly change. I can remember when I was like 23, 24, my dream was to present a radio show, and that was like my lifetime ambition, to present one radio show. And don't get me wrong, it's an amazing thing to do, but when you've done that, you're then like, well, what's next? So I think the sky's the limit. I think, I don't like to set boundaries. I just think, what would be really cool would be to like be in a movie. I would love that.
Yeah, okay, a bit of a career change, becoming an actor.
Well, you hear about like some of these, like, was it Jack Nicholson that started acting at 40? It might not have been Jack Nicholson. So again, my entertainment knowledge is poor.
No, but I know what you mean. Some people do have weird little career changes, don't they? Like midway through.
But if someone approached you and was like, Esme, we've got a Netflix documentary that we need a news reporter in, how fun would that be?
Yeah, it'd be really interesting, actually. I've seen things like that before, and it is... Do you know what's really annoying? I actually had an extra job come through. I'm on an extras agency from years ago, and they literally sent through a thing very recently, but I didn't have time because the deadline was like really quick turnaround. I didn't have time. But it was to be a news reporter in a TV show. And it was basically what you're saying. It was quite a small part, but it was just to do that. And I thought, it'd be really fun. Like, what a cool thing to do. But I didn't have time to do the self-taping when they wanted it or whatever. But it does exist, and it's a cool thing to do.
And those jobs can be massively paying as well. Like, you could get one of those jobs that's like a 20 seconds of script, and you could get like 20 grand for that. I
think this was quite badly paid, but
but you know what I mean?
For the opportunity. You never know.
That's what's weird about this industry. Something like that, you can just be like, there you go, there's 20 grand, and you're like, wow, I'm rich.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, such a good idea. Well, there we go. Maybe I'll look into that. Career change. Well, James, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and chat to us all listening about your career. Really appreciate it. And where can people follow you and find you and everything?
At JTZTV across all social medias.
JTZTV.
Yep.
Easy. There you go. Go and follow James. Have a look at his nice little sports pic.
And if anybody wants to get in touch about anything, I would actively encourage it, and I'll get back to anyone who reaches out with any questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening. We will see you on the next episode of Presently Presents. Bye.